CAC has gone up 222%.
Product market fit, 100%.
There is vision, there is team, but nothing gets shipped.
That doesn't always translate to shipping.
Product complexity should be hidden.
Trade their money for some value.
42% of startups fail.
Product management is about getting things wrong.
I want to get started from your childhood, Jeff. So, what was Jeff as a kid? What was the things that really interested Jeff back in the day, and what did you want to do?
Wow, wow. Super. Well, I don't know that I really had a terribly interesting childhood. I think it was pretty typical. Um, a lot of it was spent outdoors. I had a lot of children on my block, and so playing stickball and wiffle ball outside during the summer in the street. And everybody was out until the lights went off. So, or pardon me, the lights came on, and so I never wanted for like having a lot of friends in the neighborhood or on my block, and but I enjoyed a lot of the things that like a lot of kids. I enjoyed reading, again, playing stickball, um, being outside. Video games really weren't a terribly big thing when I was growing up. So there were a couple of things that we had, but the original Atari, um, and but yeah, in general, pretty mellow. Reading, occasionally playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yep.
Pretty
Did you
average
want
childhood.
to do anything? Like, did you want to be like, I want to do this, I want to do that back in childhood itself? Did you like, were you interested or fascinated about anything?
Yeah, you know what? I think earliest memories, I wanted to be a scientist. And I think once I was over my friend's house playing a game, and his dad was a teacher and had a computer. And I had never really seen a lot, besides like really on TV. I'd really never seen one up front, so I kind of got very interested in that at a really early age, and so teaching myself like basic programming, things like that. So I wanted to be a programmer, and that's eventually what I became in my first role as a software engineer.
You think that exposure plays a very big role, like what you're exposed to? Because I think that most of people, whatever early days, whatever their exposure is, they're probably their proximity to learn is they can only learn from what they're exposed to. You feel that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think as a very visual person, I think seeing somebody doing it and doing it for their job as well as kind of managing their house and just having fun, computer games. I saw like a lot of opportunity in that. And so it's something I wouldn't have seen, outside of that.
Yep. Did you pursue it after that?
I did, yeah. And so I took a lot of computer classes, in high school, and so learning things like Pascal and Fortran, and and Basic, and eventually was able to earn enough to get my own computer, and that's what I went to school for, and I came out and I was a software engineer for, oh boy, 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And then, that was my first job. I got a job a little bit more technical. And so during that original job, I was also doing some support, and so seeing visiting customers and things like that. I thought that was interesting. And my next job was for a company which did more product marketing and product management support. And so there would be different programs that a product manager or product marketer has, setting up help desks, doing reviews, support, um, doing competitive analysis. And so I got even more technical. And so teaching my things myself, a variety of different versions of Unix, and learning how to, um, kind of do like penetration testing and do enterprise software management and things like that were all things that I picked up on behalf of clients. Really interesting, and I think that's where I got the bug to become a product manager. I was either going to go a lot more technical, or a lot more on the kind of closer to the customers, and I think that linkage to the customers is something that I was always drawn to.
Yeah, I think to be a software engineer is very technical. In terms of what it means is that you think about the product, the tech stack, and how you kind of make it do what you want it to do, right? But in terms of putting somebody in the front line, in front of the customer, that's completely different. The other side of it, right, where you collect the requirements and that. But why did
Yeah.
you feel that? Maybe not like you could do it, but more in terms of why did you feel that that was more interesting, or were you pushed
Hmm.
to it, or were you something that was interesting that
I
happened?
thought it was interesting. Yeah, I thought it was more of a challenge. And so as an engineer, there is a lot of keeping up with the latest standards and languages and platforms and things like that. And that's fantastic. And like a lot of my very good friends are engineers. However, I felt like to push myself, I was early on, like a lot of people, I wasn't comfortable public speaking. And getting up in front of customers and talking with them about what they wanted or what they didn't like was something that was really going to take me to the next level. And so that's why it was the challenge. It was the excitement of that challenge that brought me there.
Why do you think that people fear public speaking in general? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, you're very vulnerable, and so you're out there, you're communicating, and there's the assumption that people are looking at you and making judgments about you, and you really don't have the time while you're speaking to assess that, you know what, people are just people, and it's perfectly fine. Like, you can make a mistake and people aren't going to necessarily grill you for it, if it's just, if it's just like a one-on-one conversation, or even, in some of my later work, 200 to 1 conversation. So I've moderated it at Internet World, and a couple of other conferences. I've done user group sessions with 50 plus users, and if you're in a room like that, I think the important thing for anybody to understand is that if you go there as the speaker, you're going there as the expert, and people are going there to understand and learn things. And just do your best. People will ask questions if you're not communicating properly.
Do you think after becoming a product manager, the technicality that you learned in terms of programming, did it help you towards it, or did you feel like I understood the other side of it?
A little bit of both. And so I think um, my understanding of how things work technically absolutely helped. As a product manager, I do enjoy the discovery side, working with customers, but I was better known early on, especially as somebody who knows how to work with developers. And some product managers, they go so far over to the other side where it's a lot about setting up partnerships and going out and visiting customers, that they forget that there's people behind the scenes who are actually doing the delivery work. They're doing the coding and things like that, and I find it important that I provide enough time to those people, and I owe it to them to bring back both what I've learned in the outside world, as well as listen to them. They're experts in their domains. I don't have to go and learn about the latest version of Angular or React because somebody else is doing that. And if somebody says, "Well, we're going to do something in a certain way, it's going to cost a certain amount, and it's more than I expect," I need to trust that that person is putting their best foot forward just as I would.
Right. So I want to get into a little bit in terms of the overview of what is kind of happening in businesses in general, and then we'll kind of get into how you tackle it, and then what is actually happening.
Hmm.
Just in 2026 alone, right? With just a deck and a prototype, you're able to raise around $2 to $3 million, right? So just with the deck and prototype, that's what the rate is. And I want to ask you in terms of, do you think that this is weakening the validation model? And do you think that what do you think should be the right metric to validate a company, that this company is going to work, the product is going to work?
Boy, wow, what an interesting question. Um, It really depends upon the business value that's being generated. I don't think that building something as a hobby, or I don't think that every idea is fundable, or fund worthy. I think that there are some great ideas which are getting out there right now because of the ability to build, and the ability to um, provide proofs of concept with less costs and less effort. I think it's fantastic. That said, I don't think that every opportunity is worth 2 million or $3 million. And just like in the 1990s when a lot of people were getting funded, I think we're seeing a resurgence of that, and um, I think it's a time to be more skeptical about the things which are being presented, um, not less.
Right. Let's say, well, let's take a use case maybe. If I give Jeff $1 million, right, and then
Mhm.
I'm giving Jeff to invest in maybe 10 companies are there in front of you, right? So what do you
Yeah.
look for? Is it the team? Is it the vision? The product market fit? Even if when you say POC, what exactly are you looking for? Where would Jeff put the money?
Yeah, I am product market fit 100% all the way. And so, is it something which has proof behind it? And so, I'm not really terribly interested in cool prototypes. I'm interested in somebody who has gone out there and found their first 10 customers. So, for that, I am, more traditional in how I'm, valuing the companies that I would look at to put money into. I would also look at places where I'm comfortable asking more questions about. I'm not looking to learn through making an investment. I think that's pretty risky. And I think people who look at things and say, oh, that's cool, or that's interesting, or they don't really dig into whether something is making money or not, are being responsible when they make an investment. I think you need to, just like you're investing in the stock market, look for things which are making money. Those are the things which have, the long tails to them. The more speculative things, they'll go up like a rocket, but they come down just as fast. So I'm looking for the long play when it comes to, where if I had $1 million, where would I put it?
So you're
Or
saying
if I
that
had,
it's
yeah,
yeah.
if I had 2 to 3 million, let's say.
Yeah, because I want to understand, like, when you're evaluating it, I don't think any other metric other than sales is a metric to evaluate a product. Whether the customer wants it or not, whether the product market fit is there, I think sales will itself prove it, right? Whether the product market fit is there. Is that's your statement, right? Is that's what you believe?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, whether you get the full, whether you're collecting the full amount up front, or you're doing proof of concepts, it needs to be something which a customer is willing to trade their money for some value which you're providing in your platform. And so from a team perspective, I do look for people who are, um, in it for the long haul, who are passionate about a particular area. They're not just, builder. I think it is a very popular term right now, but I'm looking for subject matter experts. I'm not looking for builders, who are strictly in it to build. I find that a lot of those folks are, they talk a lot about the technology, and they're more coming at from like a training perspective or something cool that they've learned. I would rather have a real application of what's being built.
Right, right. So, 10 customers is one metric. What would be another metric to evaluate a company other than maybe a product market fit?
Um, Evaluating a company, yeah, I would want a real complementary team of people behind it. And so I don't need to see three people who are exactly the same, who have the same skills and always agree with one another. I want to know that they are a complementary, force of nature. For example, I'm working with a company right now. I'm the product and operations advisor. Those are things that I'm good at. My founder is great in partnerships. We also have just as much product experience, but I'm the product person there. We have this, a fractional CTO who has been in it for just as long. We all have different perspectives. We don't always agree on things. However, we're always respectful. We always come to the same place, and we're as a team, we're a force of nature. We're making things happen,
Right. So the
and that's what I
combination of
look
such,
for generally.
right. That's what I was kind of looking for. The reason why I wanted to ask that was because why do they need a fractional CEO? The reason why I'll add on top of it is that do they want a different perspective? Do they want to hear the truth from somebody else, or what is the reason that they employ a fractional CEO?
Um, why do they want a fractional person? Or I'm sorry, I didn't understand the
So let's
question.
say
Was
there
it
is a
more about?
team, right? We have a team, and then the team has a level of skill set between them. But why do they need advice outside? Is it something that they're missing? Is it an experience? What is that one missing piece that they need that you bring great value in?
Yeah, it's expertise, and so it's expertise both from a strategic standpoint as well as an operational standpoint. That I've seen different things. In this case, the company is a fintech, and I've worked at a bank before. I managed a banking operations group, and so I understand a lot about moving money, making investments, and all the technical systems which are involved with that, as well as compliance. What are all the laws that fall into place with these things? That's kind of like my X factor for this company. Yeah.
Right. That is what I was kind of wanted to ask. Like, what is that X factor? I think that the word you put is correct. It's this expertise. It's like I've already done this. I know what it is, so that I can help you on how you can help it. Right.
Mhm.
You've consistently told that there is vision, there is team, but nothing gets shipped. Right? What does that mean? What does that mean in terms of the product and company?
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that there are lots of great ideas out there. So there are lots of people who spend a lot of time talking about the ideas, but that doesn't always translate to shipping. I've worked with some folks who they they want to build all of these things, but they're not really sure who they're building for. They're great ideas, but they're great. I wouldn't even say that they're great in paper. They're great in a conversation, but they really haven't translated into why for this business should we do these things. And so that when I talk about like visionaries versus people who are more practical, I want somebody to come up with a novel idea to do something. I think that's a differentiator. But in regards to um, making sure that the money is coming in, they need to be practical about it and put out things which people are. I'll go back to it. Build things which people are willing to trade their money for your value.
Absolutely agree on that because I think I was looking at some stats and about 42% of startups fail because they're building something that nobody wants. Right? So what is the first thing? We know that survey is one big thing, but what is the first thing that a company should do to validate their idea?
The first thing that they should do is talk with their prospective customers. They should understand either because they've been the customer or because they have been on site or over the customer shoulder and watched them try to do something and either gotten frustrated or tried to find some way around it before they start and go build things. Um, there are a lot of people who have built things which because of their own frustrations, but if you can't do that, then I find that going and visiting a customer or watching people do things on their phones is really the best thing that you can do.
So observing maybe a consumer how they're consuming products. Do you think that's a
100%. Yeah. In my first product job, that was one of the big skills which I picked up. And so contextual inquiry, watching a customer work, not judging, and only asking questions about, well, why did you do that? And not giving support, which I think is the harder thing for anybody who's started up their own company to do. If you've got a product out there, yeah, you do want to help your customers, but in that role, in that place and time where you're just observing, it's really about data collection. It's not about support. You can take those things back to the office and get back to them, very quickly. But I feel like understanding the context of the customer and then taking that one step further to contextual design is invaluable.
Um, to just elaborate on that, what does a project manager do and what does a product owner do? What is the difference between?
Yeah, as a product manager, you're out there, you're analyzing the market, you're understanding the broader scope of where your product fits in, both from a market perspective as well as how it is aligned with your company's goals. um, for example, McDonald's is, they're never going to buy build a car. If somebody says, hey, you know what, we can make a lot of money building cars at McDonald's, it's not part of their long term strategy to be in that market. And so it'll, just like that, there's a lot more nuanced discussions which go on in a company about alignment with the strategic goals, and sometimes features get added which are not in alignment, and a lot of times they don't fit, or if they do, they may change the way that the company works. No judgment on either side of that, but that's just the way things happen sometimes.
So, do companies need more product managers or product owners?
And so going back to product owners, product owner is somebody who lives at the tactical area between the product manager and the developers. They're there to make those clarifications and write the stories or qualify the stories, or get the the just enough technical details to help write a story that an engineer can then do. They're representative for those folks in the agile ceremonies, in the dailies, or at least a couple of times a week in the daily stand-ups, and they're there to kind of like guide the ship at a much more granular level. In regards to which do you need more of, um, or what is the composition of like a product manager, product owner? Is there a ratio? It depends upon the company. Some companies really only need a product owner to get things out of the founder's head to make them happen before you kind of get into managing roadmaps and working, handing off the work with the customer. Sometimes the founder is really the product manager. Um, and in some cases you need a bunch of product owners because you have so many things happening so quickly that you need these people to keep an eye on your or be a participant in your development teams. So like a lot of things that product managers say, or a lot of the responses, the answer is it depends.
Right, right. So basically, they sit in between a product manager and a developer, right? They are the communication layer where they want to technically convey what we need to do and to see if there's a fit, right?
Yeah, yeah. And you know what? In most of my career, I have been a combination product manager and product owner. When you have a product which isn't the most popular, quite often or you're in a startup situation, you're both of those things.
Perfect. Okay. So let's get into like a company, maybe a use case, right? What is the first product that you managed? What was the first product like? Yeah.
Yeah, you know what? I was actually hired to be a product manager over more of a horizontal area, so more from a user experience perspective over administrative functions. But very quickly, I found I really wanted to own my own product, and so there was a product inside the company that really nobody loved, or you know, that's what we thought. And so I told my boss, like, yeah, I would love to take this on. The current product manager, who wasn't doing anything with it, was very, very supportive. We're still friends. And very quickly, I found out that we were going to end of life that product. And that's fine. End of lifing is just saying that it's the product's time has come and you're going to help the customers transition to either a new product or to a partner's product. And the first step of that is creating a letter to customers to notify them of the end of life. And so that was my very first task, but I didn't really, um, and it was completely new. And so my thought was, well, I'm communicating. Let me find out who I'm communicating with first. And so I started talking with customers and reaching out to salespeople to figure out what that looks like.
Okay, okay, and then
Yeah. And then I found out that, you know what? We're giving the product away. It really didn't have a lot of value. It was losing money. All the things, all the reasons why you would end of life a product. And then I started finding customers who actually loved the product. And there weren't a lot of them, but there were enough of them where I started talking with the developers and how the product was being supported. And then I reached out to some sales engineers and people who were on the front lines. And then I reached out to support people and then some third party partners who I had met. And there were people out there using our product as more of a platform to build things rather than really the very monolithic thing that it was. It was a report writer. It was, with a very, very costly business intelligence infrastructure. Um, and so people did want to use it for business intelligence. They didn't want to use it the way that we were presenting it. And so I went and I pitched to our CTO and a few others, and I was able to get funding to do more research and eventually relaunch the product.
okay, and then what happened after that? Did it kick off? Uh,
Yeah, yeah. Well, I paint a pretty picture of getting funding, but that is a negotiation, which is a big part of a product manager's job. And my CTO reminded me that I had not made any money for the company, and so I was being watched. So, the as a product manager, one of the lessons I learned is that um, build your team, build your alliances. My alliances were largely with developers. As previously a developer, I had a lot of great relationships there. As somebody who was a sales engineer early in my career, that was kind of after um, the analyst stuff that I did. I had a lot of great relationships with our sales engineers and salespeople. So I built my team, and they backed me up and they helped me build a financial model for what the new product would look like. We were able to get modest funding for it, and 9 months later, it had gone from a money loser to making $1 million for the company. Um, and a lot of that was from existing customers. We brought on a lot of customers. We stopped giving it away, and yeah, it was a massive, massive win.
I have a very interesting question in the story. The thing is that it's so interesting because when let's say if there's let's take a founder, right, and he has a product, and for him, he's worked with the product for a long time, and there is two choices that he has to take at every step in the entrepreneurial journey, right? One is that uh, if the time has come, then you have to end the product. Otherwise, you're going to probably have more. You're going to burn more cash, and then it's probably not going to lead anywhere, right? And then the second thing is that maybe you are just it's not time yet, and then the market is maybe not ready, and maybe in some time you'll probably or some fixes that needs to be done so that the product is going to be a hit, right? I think in this example, the story that you just said, I think both of them are true, right? When yeah, so I was thinking that whenever that dilemma is there, how do you take a decision?
Yeah, yeah. So I was still open minded to end of lifing the product. I went out, I started talking with partners who would have taken over the report writing aspects of the platform. Um, I had talked with, as I mentioned, a lot of customers, a lot of support people who were like, "Yeah, you know what? Nobody ever calls about that thing." And so I was ready. I had the letter written, and I had a date when it was going to end of life, and I had a plan for moving it to the next person. But that I looked at that and I had all these people who were like fanatical about it, who like really loved the product. And I thought, like, there's a fit out there. We just we kept on evolving the functionality. We didn't evolve to fit the customer's need. Um, it was presented as a generic reporting tool, and that's not how the people who were using it. And so my pitch was, there's we're already creating value. We've already vetted out the concept of this, but the concept wasn't one that the previous product teams had come up with. It's become something else. We have a great relationship with our BI vendors. I think I can renegotiate and get better licensing terms, and so that's what I did. There were a lot of pieces which came together, and our engineering team, which had even more experience than me in business intelligence at the time. They had come from financial services and fraud detection and things like that. They were like, "Yeah, there's something to be had here. We didn't know about these customers either. Let's, if we were in the company that they had come from, they would have gone after it." And so that's how myself and those others were able to convince our CTO to fund the product. But I've also made cases. I've also made cases in my career to kill products, and that's those. I feel those were just as legitimate. There wasn't the business case to make the different decision.
Right, but maybe the question was like more in terms of I think you're very relevant, but you felt that it's going to work. Was it because of you understood the customer better? Because I want to understand that there was a product manager before that, but they didn't feel that, but you did. But was that something that you found or something like that? Or that
Yeah, yeah. I just talked with people who were very passionate. Like, they weren't even just users; they were fanatical users. And so I found those people, whereas the previous product managers were just the original product managers were not the original product manager, and so they had adopted it, and it had been passed down, between multiple people, and so there was more of an interest in moving past it and working on more interesting things. Whereas I was brand new. This was my first product management job. I wanted to do very much everything by the book. And so I definitely didn't do things by the book. So, spoilers, I didn't do things by the book. I didn't go along with the team. I didn't make it easy on myself. I didn't take the easy road out. I went all in on a small group of customers and their willingness to pay for something.
should you follow the book or should you have your own book? Should you write your own book from day one?
Well, when it's your first job, you're encouraged to follow the book, but I very much followed my own book, and I think that came from my consulting background, working with a lot of different companies and having to be the one to set the pace. So I think that was one of the differentiators that I brought to the table, which I don't know that anybody really expected at that point.
Right, right. When you walk into a company, and what is the first thing that you do, and then you're hired in terms of advising and consulting for today, what is the first thing that you do?
Yeah, I want to know what everybody thinks that they are building and what they're selling. So I want to see alignment across the different team members. I want to see excitement. I want to see some energy behind what they're building. Um, I want to understand who their customers are and why does this thing make a difference in their lives. It's all about the people. I mean, for me.
Would you maybe ask what are you guys building, or would you ask like what is the customer asking for? Because as soon as you
Yeah,
walk in, which is the first thing that you would probably.
Yeah, I think it's more important to ask, yeah, what is the customer asking for, and asking that to each of the different participants. So you will hear different things from different people, and I think that's something interesting to pick up on as well. And then if everybody's aligned, I think that's a great case for a product. As long as, again, as long as the customer agrees that that's what they're looking for, then I think that you can't get any better than that. If there's some misalignment between what are we building or what are we, who are we helping, um, I think that's something to bring back to the table and share with everybody that that they should come together and understand, like, does this make sense? Is it an additive story? Is it just kind of like edge cases that we're talking about where the differences are, or is there a real misalignment?
Uh, because I think although we, product owners and product managers and founders, they do tell you a story, and customers also do the same thing. But how do you really understand what the customer is? Like, what is the best formatting for in terms of understanding what customer needs? Is it like an issue ticket or speaking to them? How do you understand the voice of the customer?
Yes, the voice of the customer, my favorite topic. Picking up the phone, asking the customer, like, how's it going? What's going on? Providing providing value, and not just taking. It's also about sharing where you are in the journey and where the product is and where you see it going, and seeing if that makes sense or if they're willing to look at prototypes or screenshots or things like that. Um, there's no better value than talking with a customer. And I would go further to say one on one. Over when there's multiple people in the room. I think that there's some challenges when there's multiple customers in the room that um, that prevent people from really saying exactly what they want to say.
Right. Another thing is that how do you, and the customers, there are customer needs, and there are only some needs that they'll pay for. How do you differentiate that one? They might say ABC, but how do you differentiate it? This is the thing that they'll pay for. It might solve their problem, but they might not actually pay for it.
Well, if it's going to save them time or make them money, those are typically things which are going to differentiate that. There are some potentially more strategic or differentiating functionality that we provide that there might not be as exact of a match with those things. But I think when you talk about the product holistically, that the ability to get all the things that you need for a particular business function, um, there's some value in having them all together, even if parts aren't exactly, you know, the way you like things. If you look at something like, Claude, for example, it has a lot of connectors. And so Claude doesn't need to be Zapier. It doesn't need to be, Google. It has hooks into all of those things, and from there, it can connect and bring in data from anywhere. But it is a fantastic platform for AI enabled workflows and AI, agentic coding and things like that, because of those connectors.
What do you think about Claude and what do you think about ChatGPT? Just a off-topic question.
Yeah, you know what? I'm a big Claude fan. I built some like full-on product operating systems, some full-on delivery pipelines using Claude. With my last customer, I built out, I want to say like 14 or 15 skills. I turned those into, agents, and it managed the coordination between the roadmap work I was doing and the more of what like a product owner was doing. So I really recreated a product owner within Claude. Now it had all my standards for what I like in a story and how I like to communicate. Um, it was connected to Slack. It was connected to Notion, Linear, um, Google Docs. It read my email. It looked at my notes. It was the best assistant, to kind of like figure out like, well, what parts of my meeting notes were really requirements or bugs. as well as what was my, of the 100 things my founder had every week that he wanted to change. Um, what were they all? What were all of them? I had never picked up that many items, and being able to review and prioritize them and push aside all of the unimportant stuff so efficiently, with any platform. So I really love Claude. I use Gemini a lot for research. ChatGPT I love for image generation. I really started ChatGPT is where I started, but when it comes to Gen AI stuff, but right now, for at least this week, Claude is my best friend.
Maybe that's
Uh,
the right way of putting it. Yeah, because we
I don't
don't
know
know
about it.
what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. I'll tell you a funny story. So last year, probably September, I did a research report for a hedge fund manager who is very not familiar with the AI market, and so he wanted like a market overview, and he also wanted to understand like a lot of my things. There's a lot of compliance around them. Is there anything that I can do? And so I also built out like a things to try and like a step by step like implementation guide for things that he can work on, reviewing, financial documents and things like that. And it was like a 2 week project, super quick. And within the span of those 2 weeks, the market leader changed like 3 or 4 times. It was crazy. And so I got it done. I took an extra week. I wrote like another page, another like a writer to talk about like the dynamic nature of the LLM market, and it's still going on today. You see things going on. Claude's pulling ahead a little bit, but I wouldn't count anybody else out either.
There is an equal amount of competition, right?
Yeah,
Maybe, yeah, just maybe a mile difference between each one of them. Yeah. I want to come back and ask in terms of, have you ever gotten a customer requirement wrong, and did you learn anything from it? I think maybe what you get wrong usually teaches us a lot.
yeah,
Yeah. Do you have a
yeah,
story or
all the
anything?
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, product management is about getting things wrong. It's about experimenting and working to make things better. So yeah, I worked with an insurance company. It was a full time job. I was the full product manager for a suite of compliance products, and very much the things that you're doing in compliance. There's a lot of like reporting and auditing and things like that. And so I thought that the customer wanted better reporting, and so that's what I built out. And the reporting wasn't really necessarily the best, but I felt like, well, okay, I'm providing a more flexible framework, and I had learned from my work in BI, like this is probably the way to do it. Well, I was wrong. The product itself was difficult to set up. It was a rules engine which identified for different insurance companies whether auto shops were trying to take advantage of getting paid for things which they shouldn't have gotten paid for. We provided this rules engine which was very complex. Um, Creating more complex and more elaborate rules didn't make it a better product. It the what customers wanted, which I found out when I talked with kind of a disgruntled customer, was, hey, like we don't know why we're spending more time. We bought your product, and we're spending more time editing things. Kind of like doing manual appraisals of like we're doing double the work of an auto shop to understand if we should pay or not. And it was frustrating for me. I didn't get it right away. And then um, one of the things that I've learned is like take a step back, understand the customer. It's all about the customer. Like I can build things just like the founder who has a great idea. They're not always right. And so I asked this customer, what does success look like for you? And that's the question which really changed my career. Um, the customer lit up. He started talking about the that there were rules which were obviously not right, They created the rules, like we didn't create them, and they didn't know why they were triggering so often. And so we dug in deeper, and I asked them to step back even further and look at all the rules together, and look. And then I said, "Well, do you have any data to show me how this is?" And they said, "Do I have data? Yeah, I've got hundreds of records where we're doing manually, and here's 100 where these should have gone through automation and auto passed, and these should have gone through automation and auto failed." And so from that, I was able to take that data and say, "Hey, give me 3 days. Like, let me take a closer look at this." I asked them. I probably was either on the phone or sent them like a dozen emails during that time. And when I came out the other side, I was able to say, "Yeah, you know what? It's not so much any given rule; it's your combination of rules additively." They get to a place where you're getting like a yellow light situation instead of a very clearly red or green light, and so that's why all of your assessors are having to go back and re-review the same work. Here's some recommendations that I have that these make sense. And over the next day and a half, 2 days, we worked more closely together than ever before to reconfigure the system. um, from there, I was able to take that exercise and say, how would I build something to mimic to simulate this exercise of testing out? And really, the gotcha was, I had the answer. It was inside of Microsoft Excel and its what if functionality. And so, what if I change this one thing? How does that propagate through the system? And so, armed with 200 estimates, which should have been in better shape, um, how if I change like one thing, if I change one rule or one limit, what does it look like when it comes out the other side? And so I began to tinker and came up with really a prototype in Excel of the functionality that we would implement later on.
I think it's a very interesting thing. I think product complexity should be hidden as much as possible, because I don't think you might feel that it's very impressive that you have 200 features or 200 things that you've been added. But I think as simple and minimalistic as it is, I think makes the product much more better, because you don't have to give them a cognitive overload of using the product itself. Uh,
That's right. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've done some machine language learning products and things like that. People don't need to know necessarily the algorithms. They need to know the intent of the output. However, there's data scientists who spend years learning these things. The customer doesn't need that, like you said, that cognitive overload from having to be uh, going through 5 or 6 or 10 years of data science work to understand that this product is now going to increase their sales by 20%.
Great, great. Yep. Now we've understood the customer. How do you convey this to the? Do you convey all of it to the developer? Do you filter it out? What is Jeff's filtering process of what to be conveyed?
Yeah, I want as somebody who's a former developer, I want my developers to understand that what they do makes a difference and why, and how does that align with the company. They report up Ultimately, we all report up to the same CEO. I want that person to understand. I want it to be a collaborative effort where we're all aligned on things. Um, if you're just talking with an individual engineer, that typically doesn't work. I've built things with individual engineers um, from scratch, and that's fine. Like, you can very quickly, rapidly prototype things. Um, but when it comes to something which is going to add a new line of revenue, you need to get more buy-in than strictly an engineer to get started with.
Hmm, hmm. But do you feel that in terms of, let's say, we working with these developer, customer, who would, if you were to put people in the chair, who and all would you have in the chair for a company? A product manager, a developer, definitely the end user. Is there anybody else you would put on the table?
Yeah, I would want somebody in either professional services or support there. Somebody who is going to own the cost, the ongoing maintenance support of that particular product. So you can build the best product and it can be completely aligned to that customer. But if your costs are out of whack, then that's going to catch up to you too. Um, for new products, as far as like in the chair or chair adjacent, at least like they have the ability to be in the meeting. I have been leaning in, especially with smaller companies, having somebody from finance there as well, so that we understand like what the expense is of something. Um, Now it might be that I'm working with different groups at different times. So there might be when I'm working with proof of concepts, I don't need an accountant in the room for that. But when we're talking about changing our investment strategy for our portfolio, then I do want the right people in the right room, people who can make decisions about what what can we spend, where's the best place to put our engineers, do we have a plan in place, proof of concept, a high level estimate for things like that, and and somebody who understands the longer term cost of adding a core piece of functionality to our line of business.
Perfect. Yep. I want to talk a little bit in terms of distribution, and your shift products for both consumer products and also a 20 billion dollar bank. So, what is your take on B2B and B2C? What is the difference in terms of the distribution level? It has been evolving, but what is it for today?
Yeah, with B2B, I'm not going to give you the definitions of those, but I find with B2B, you are dealing with a an ecosystem of value providers, and so as big as some players are, within the value chain, in regards to providing solutions, they need to work with somebody else, and so having the right relationships in place, to get your name out there, aka that distribution, is really important. Being great partners, to the people at other places where you're not an expert and maybe you're using them as part of your own infrastructure, or you're going to commonly work with somebody else's infrastructure, is really important. So when I was doing omni-channel personalization for B2C websites, um, the implementation companies, these big e-commerce platforms, martech platforms, where they were providing the communications for empty cart situations, or for remarketing, or for other e-commerce transaction communications, were important relationships to have. So on the B2B side of things, yeah, it's again, it's just like internal, but you're broadening the umbrella just a little bit and saying like these are all your partners. Some of them are going to be technology, some of them are going to be sales. Ultimately, they're all sales in some way, shape, or form. You're going to be just like they're an icon on your website saying, "Hey, we partner with." You're going to be that same thing for them. And so make yourself available, make referrals, build a strong, channel that way. Um, for B2C, it really depends upon the functionality that you're building out. And so for like a bank, or I was just working with a print on demand, an AI enabled print on demand um, company, which did greeting cards. And so really it was going out and finding customers, and understanding, how do you build a growth strategy around social media and referrals and affiliates and things like that. So the the people change, the amount of effort that you need to put into it, I feel, changes. Although I'm a lot stronger on the B2B side, so the B2C stuff, it does take a lot of effort to do, and you're talking more in volume. You're out there hunting for those one-on-one sales. In many cases, I will say that there are still partnership opportunities even in B2C. Um, something like a bank is it's not only a financial services institution, they're a source of education on financial services. And so they have their loans, they have other things. They provide these, the how much it costs for a loan and the interest rates and all that kind of stuff. There are people who are willing to do comparisons of those, and so partner with those people is a way to go. It's more of a B2B relationship within a B2C acquisition strategy.
Okay, okay, okay. If you were to put top three places where you would distribute, where people are there in B2B, where would you distribute them? Let's say LinkedIn, maybe platforms, in terms of platforms, where would you distribute the product?
Where would I go? B to B wise. Um, wow, that is an interesting question. Um, I don't know that I'd look at a particular place. I would look at the segment that the product was serving, and so Um, if it was, well, let's go back to financial services for a second. Um, and it was a mortgage related, product. And so, there are, companies which will do the comparison and provide that, or companies which will say, um, compare, insurance is another one. And it just coincidentally one that I've been in. Compare the insurance rates across all these things. They'll build a wizard. They ask you some questions about like the type of insurance and the amount of coverage and all those things. And then they'll recommend two or three people that you can get in contact with. So I'd really look industry wide, who are people in the value chain, and I would build it out against there. As far as like more advertising strategies, LinkedIn versus like a Pinterest or an Instagram or things like that. I think that there's some interesting things to be had when it comes to understanding like a general persona for your customers, where those are fine for like advertising strategies. I don't know in regards to like direct outreach, the effectiveness of those. Yeah.
Okay. And what makes them switch? Let's say there is a company in a B2B, there's a company is already using a product. And then your product, maybe it is superior to the other product, but there's a lot of switching cost in B2B compared to
Yeah.
B2C. There's a lot of switching costs. So what is it? How do you convince them to switch?
How do I convince the switch? Well, yeah, especially when it's a big investment. I'm looking for the longer term. Um, I'm valuing the longer term relationship with the prospect over the short term cost, and so I am kind of being that go to market sales engineer mindset. Yeah, if there are things that we can do to migrate a customer more effectively, then I'm going to absorb that cost. um, as a product manager, I recommend that, kind of that taking that on. It's the, why would you switch phone companies? Why do people switch phone companies every few years? Well, you get a new phone and the switching costs, somebody's going to eat the shipping, the migration costs. And so I look at it like very similarly, that that's kind of like my go-to strategy. In regards to just convincing people, yeah, I'm looking at the value, I'm looking at the long-term cost, the training costs that you might have with another provider. If that other provider has, shifted their direction in the market and is not making investments on particular functionality, which I happen to be good at, I'm pointing those things out as well.
Right. The reason why I kind of wanted to ask that was that recently I was doing some research on this, and then each for any consumer, right? They kind of want to have at least touch 13 pieces of content on average before they even land with the product, and then the CAC has gone up 222% for
Yes.
consumer. So I would understand what is the thing that is driving this. Is it because they don't want to? It's not only in terms of switching cost, in terms of financial cost, in terms of training, in terms of I think it kind of the umbrella has all of the costs under it. Training, switching, and people don't want to learn something new because they're already used to the workflow. So that's why I kind of wanted to ask that one. I just want to ask you that what is the best practice that you kind of want to like keep with your developers? What is something that every product manager or a product owner should do so that they are in sync with the developers?
I think you need to keep in touch with them on a regular basis, and that's probably every week or several times a week. Some product managers don't do that. I don't believe with that. I don't believe in pointing out when things aren't right after not or not making yourself available. So making yourself available, going to the stand-ups, going to the retrospectives, taking their feedback to heart when it comes to things which are said in a retrospective is one of the top things that you can do. um, and when somebody says they give you an estimate, believe them until they give you a reason to not believe them, or ask questions about in a respectful way. I don't understand why changing a label on a page is going to take us 2 days. Can you break that down for me? Um, that's a real example. And having been somebody who knows HTML, it boggled my mind, and my brain cells were sizzling just thinking about like how what I would do. And I asked my developer, like, can you break this down, because I don't understand. Here's where I'm coming from. And he's able to say, well, you know what? That's not just a label. There's a lot of dynamic functionality behind that. I need to change that in 3 places. We need to test it. We need to make sure that the data supports it. We're pulling in a dynamic label that a customer put in someplace, um, and it's not just swapping out words. And so um, taking time to understand and be willing to be wrong, or at least if you are 100% sure that you're right and they're 100% sure that they're right, um, take the position that you might just be wrong some of those times, and put trust in it. If it's a difference in how to do things, then let it go 100% as a product manager. If it is, you know, th- I don't agree with this or that, um, let them give it a try. As a product manager, I'm okay with making a mistake, and I should extend the same grace to my team. And you know what? I have learned things in that way about implementation and building out better infrastructure and things like that, because I said, you know what? I'm taking a hard stance, but like, I'm wrong here. Like, you're the expert. Go for it. Um, what's the worst that why don't you tell me what's the worst thing that can happen, just so I can get ahead of it in case. And that has changed the tone, it has changed the relationships, um, and has allowed us to kind of like move past bigger things, because I was not I was willing to be wrong, um, instead of just taking a hard line.
Yeah, because I want to come back to the story where like you work with the developer and then you were able to land a Fortune 100 client, right? So I wanted to kind of ask like that is that what helps it? Can you give us the story of what that is?
Yeah, yeah. So in regards to we were asked to build, or there was a concept for a personalized search engine, and so it was going to use machine learning and build out a search engine which used personalization technology. Now, I was the core product manager, or I was the product manager for the core feature already, And so, from an API perspective, I understood how everything worked and how personalization works in emails, on landing pages, on shopping carts, and category pages, and all that kind of stuff. Going to search was something completely different. Um, I got the customer, our CEO. I talked with like a prospect, and had really kind of like pre-sold this thing. And so I came in and said, okay, yeah, it's a decent idea. We've got a patent for it. Let's go for it. Like I wasn't my priority, but I was game to make it happen. I thought that there was something there. Um, and so I got enough information. We built a prototype. We showed them. Uh, we built a prototype. My lone engineer, who was not a developer, he was an implementation specialist. He built a prototype completely, white screen. Had Elasticsearch behind the scenes, and it integrated our personalization API. It worked. It worked fantastic. We used their catalog. They were really happy. And then we got to our second meeting when we were talking about implementing it, and more people showed up. And that's when all the wheels came off the cart. Um, we had a customer who told me in the meeting with this engineer, with our CTO, obviously you don't care about this. Obviously you don't care about us or this project, or you wouldn't be showing me this. It was frustrating. Yeah, and but from there, again, going back to taking a beat, continuing, asking what a success looked like to you, I was able to get to the heart of it. It was really, from my perspective, a small feature. From the customer's perspective, the most important thing. Um, this personalized search product was being presented to a women's apparel brand. And one of the things that they wanted to see when somebody searched for a green dress was a green dress, right? Seems kind of obvious. Well, what if the default image for that same style dress was black? That's what happened. We presented the default image instead of the color specific image, and it upset them to no end. Um, so I said, like a lot of cases, give me 3 days. We can solve this. Um, and we came back, we did an analysis of their data. A lot of their colors were not like red, yellow, green, or blue. They were sunburst, which was orange. They were daisy, which was yellow. They were midnight or electric, different variations of black or purple. So I got with the before going back to the marketing people and the CEO, who was just beside himself. We I said, hey, do you have like color maps for all of these colors that you're using? And they said, oh yeah, we do that all the time. Do you want us to set up an FTP for you? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. That's like, how fast does it change? And they're like, it never changes. Like, it every so often it does. I was like, yeah, FTP is fine. SFTP, a secure file transfer, protocol. And so we built that out. I didn't have a configuration, interface for that. So one of the great things is that I had built that team that I talked about. I had a couple of implementation people who were able to help build that part of it out. Added it very quickly to the roadmap, and within a couple of weeks, it was working fantastically. We tuned it up. They gave us, I think, like 10% of their traffic, and so they were going to use their plain vanilla Elasticsearch and our personalized version of Elasticsearch. Um, in that time, we were able to update the product so that it was like a type ahead search version, in addition to the search results, where if you hit enter, it goes to a search page. We were able to get it to go so fast. We're talking, tens of microseconds response time we were able to get out of it. And it was working like gangbusters. And then the next surprise hit me. But this one was a little different. There was a trade show. That particular client was at the trade show. They um, they were talking about how great the product was. Now, I had only had after that. You don't care about our product. I didn't have any conversations with that other person. They were kind of in the background, but really didn't want to speak. I was having a lot of discussions with engineering and like one with the marketing person to make sure it was configured the right way. That that testimonial was heard by a Fortune 100 company who we happen to be engaged with, and that search product became their first entry point into this product line. Um, and Yeah, the rest is history. That was our biggest entry point for a non core product ever. And it just goes to show you, like, there's surprises to be had everywhere. It's just important to breathe, um, and understand the customer, and then um, read the situation the right way, and kind of work on it from there. We got a lot of other because of that Fortune 100 company. We got a lot of other companies that followed suit, starting with this very niche, very taped together product, which with no development team, with again an implementation person, which we very quickly built the management interface for it, and made us a lot of money.
I don't have anything else, Jeff. Thanks a lot for your time.
Hey, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to catching up with you later on this. Be good.